2.
Hello, I'm Stephan Bonnar. Welcome to the final round. Joined as always by Mr. Matthew Holt, and just got one fight night to break down this week, one card, and that's UFC Fight Night 121 from Sydney, Australia. And not too excited about this card. I guess we've been spoiled in the last couple of weeks, but the main event, Marcin Tybura versus Fabricio Werdum. Huge dog Tybura is. And is it worth laying a little play on him?
So just to mention real quick, we're going to start tracking our plays this week. I know people ask me all the time, how are you guys doing? How's it going? So we're going to start tracking them. You know, we'll post them on on Twitter or something after. I'm actually going to put, we're going to consider all plays 100 unless you want to bet more than 100. So I'm going to put up the hundo here on Tybura. And I don't know that I love Tybura. I don't know that he's ready for this step up. But at 40 years old, I also don't know where is Werdum going from here? And I don't know that he takes a punch as well anymore. Now look, he looked great against Walt Harris, but Walt Harris didn't try. He tapped out to that armbar before they even hit the mat, it seemed like.
Yeah, I mean, once that fight was on the ground, he was
like, okay, you got me down. I don't want to do this anymore. Tybura has the ground game, I think. Look, he obviously doesn't want to get into a grappling match too much with Werdum, but at least maybe he can go down and get back up. You know, he's not going to be suffocated down there. And if they stay on the feet, this is a guy whose dirty boxing isn't bad, you know. He looked pretty good in a couple of fights. I did think in his debut against Timothy Johnson, he seemed to have those UFC jitters and kind of gaslight. Yeah, and Johnson was able to take advantage of it and outwork him. But since then, I thought he's looked really good. Again, I don't know that he's ready for this fight, but there's no way I am laying 340 with Fabricio Werdum, and at plus 280 at this point, and especially with heavyweights where anything can happen, I'm going to go ahead and take the shot with Tybura.
And he hasn't been finished, has he? Aren't both his losses by
decision?
decision?
Both losses by decision, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Not playing him big, but there's, at 3-1, what the hell? I'll put a little small play on him. And, Werdum, obviously, much better on the ground. But Tybura does, I think, have the power to knock him out.
He has 7 knockouts, and I like the fact that 13 of his 16 wins are by finish.
Yeah.
So this is a guy that can go in there and end the fight at any time, and that's what you need to be able to do. When you're stepping up in class against the guy who you're going to have a tough time winning a decision against, probably, the fact that you can get in there, get the finish, either on the ground or standing. And if people always say, well, Verdum's a better grappler, how would he submit him? Simple. You hurt a guy and then you submit him, right? Yeah. It happens all the time. The better grappler gets submitted because he got hurt on the feet first, and then it turned into a submission. So I think Tybura has plenty of opportunities to actually win this fight, and, we'll see. Werdum...
The one thing that worries me about Tybura is, he's shown, like in the Timothy Johnson fight, conditioning problems, and this is a 5-round fight. So, if this fight does go into those fourth and fifth championship rounds, then I think Fabricio's got an advantage because he's been there before.
Probably. That's probably a fair point.
And my question is, how is the co-main event, Beck Rawlings versus Jessica Ray Clark, with someone who's 2-4 in the UFC versus someone making their UFC debut, how does that win the co-main event spot?
And I thought there were some decent fights here. Daniel Kelly's had a nice run in the UFC. He doesn't have a lot of fights left in him. That probably could have been the co-main event here, the local guy fighting a name in Teodoro, or even Tim Means, Belal Muhammad. That's an important fight. Winner probably breaks the top 15. It certainly felt like there were some opportunities for a different fight, but Beck Rawlings is super popular in Australia and for good reason. And actually, both these girls are Australian here, and I like Beck Rawlings in this fight. When you go down the list of fighters that Beck Rawlings has fought, Tisha Torres and Paige Van Zandt, and all the girls she's fought, yes, she's only 7-6. Her record's underwhelming. She doesn't seem to win the big fights, but she has fought anyone and everyone in that division against an opponent who basically hasn't fought anyone. The only fight that Rose Clark ever fought was against Sarah Kaufman, and she got destroyed by Sarah Kaufman. I actually think this fight is more likely to stay on the feet than not, and I think Beck Rawlings, while she's not the power puncher here, Rose Clark is, I think Rawlings is probably going to be the volume striker here, and when this one goes to the ground, Beck Rollins' ground game against Rose Clark ground game, I'm taking Beck Rollins. I thought this price was a little light. I thought it should have been over $2. Beck Rollins is going to have the crowd. She has the superior ground game. She's the more active fighter. Her level of competition is light years ahead here. I think there's a lot of reasons to like Beck Rollins. And similar to Ryan Quinn, who doesn't have the best record overall and was fighting an undefeated fighter, I think we're finding value in a fighter here because their record doesn't speak to what the fighter is.
2-4 in the UFC, and you could get her at minus 140 right
But
now.
those four are all top-notch fighters.
Top-level competition.
When she steps down in class, Beck gets the job done.
A fight I put a little wood on, a $200 bet, is Tim Means to win 100. Tim Means minus 225 favorite against Bald Muhammad, and Tim Means, he's been in there with everyone. Neil Magny, Masvidal, Matt Brown, Cowboy Oliveira. So he's definitely
Alex
fought
Garcia in his last.
in a fight that he won.
Yeah.
He's been in there with the higher level competition. He has a reach advantage. He's 7-3-1 in the UFC, and he's fighting Belal Muhammad, who's a decent fighter, not taking anything away from him, but he's 3-2 in the UFC, and this is a big step up in competition.
And styles make fights here. And Belal Muhammad has been able to get in both of his wins in the UFC, he was able to outstrike his opponents on the feet. And what we also have seen from Tim Means is when Tim Means is at its best, it's against shorter guys. Alex Garcia is a killer. Don't make no mistake about it. He is a beast. Fights at TriStar Gym. He's ripped. He's a ground assassin. He throws really powerful punches. Tim Means ate him for lunch because he eats up smaller guys. Who has Tim Means had trouble with? Cowboy Oliveira, a bigger guy. Neil Magny, a huge welterweight. You know, Tim Means has had trouble with guys that are bigger than him because he's used to being the bigger, longer guy. And when he does, he seems to take care of business. Look, 7-2-1 in his last 10, and that won the no contest to Cowboy Oliveira. It wasn't Tim Means getting beat up on the ground. It was Cowboy Oliveira, and they called it an illegal shot by Tim Means. Tim Means was well on his way to knocking out Cowboy in that one. It could easily be 8-2 in his last 10. I think there's a lot of reasons to like Tim Means here. Belal Muhammad, only 5'10", which doesn't seem that short, but it's short for 170 pounds in the UFC. There's going to be a huge reach, huge height advantage here for Tim Means. And normally when he has that, he tends to destroy opponents, especially when that opponent doesn't have the ground game to hurt him on the ground.
So I take it this is a $300 for you.
This is a $200 for me because you already got to risk almost $500 to make $200 because you're risking basically like $460 to make $200. So this is a $200 play for me. I think Tim Means might be the strongest play on this card because of all the advantages he has, and when we have seen him have these same advantages in the past, he was able to take advantage of them. And look, when Belal Muhammad stepped up, and we're not even talking big steps up, Alan Jobain, Vicente Luque. Vicente Luque knocked him out. Alan Jobain was able to pick him apart on the feet. And what is Alan Jobain? A taller, longer kickboxer. And Tim Means is even taller, longer, and a more powerful puncher. People forget Tim Means has 18 wins by knockout. This guy's a lot like Matt Brown. And that he's tall, he's long, he doesn't look that intimidating, but he hits you with punches, standing elbows. That standing elbow that Matt Brown landed, wow. Beautiful. Tim Means is the same kind of guy. Knees, elbows, Muay Thai. I think he's going to put Belal Muhammad away.
Moving on, we got Jake Matthews versus Bohan Velikovic. And this one, I thought Bohan was going to be the favorite in this fight. I was kind of surprised to see him as a slight underdog. Let's see the updated stats on him. You can get Bohan at a plus 115. Jake Matthews is now minus 135. And I like Bohan in this fight. You know, that loss to Darren Till doesn't look as bad right now after seeing what Darren Till did to Cowboy Cerrone.
Especially since he gave Darren Till a heck of a fight.
Yeah, it was a close competitive fight. And his only losses have been by decision. I believe that loss to Sultan Aliyev was a split decision loss. And, you know, Jake Matthews, 2-3 in his last 5, and really like doesn't look like the world beater. I'm not sure why he was favored in this fight. Do you have any idea?
No, I think here's the problem that some of these guys run into, and matchmaking isn't a perfect science, so I don't want to sit here and bag on the UFC or any of their matchmakers. But I think, they like to take some of these guys that have a little momentum off those tough shows and throw them into fights that maybe they're not ready for. So look, Jake Matthews right now is only 23 years old. I think on the show he was only like 20.
Jeez.
And all of a sudden here comes a 20-year-old kid. He's in there with guys like James Vick. When you look at Jake Matthews, 2 fights ago he fought Kevin Lee, who just fought for the interim lightweight championship. And Kevin Lee destroyed him, knocked him out cold. I mean, I think he was fighting fights he isn't ready for. So for me, he's a hard guy to gauge. All right. Look, this fight really takes here. Let's call it in the rankings. These guys are probably in the 25 to 35 range in the lightweight rankings. Okay, you can get that, or welterweight rankings. He was fighting guys that are like number 2, Kevin Lee. I mean, he was not at 21 years old. He's getting blown away. So I don't know, but I also didn't even see on the show yet. And again, he's really young, so we've seen these young guys make these big jumps. But if he hasn't made the jump, if just what we've seen from Jake Matthews is who he is, I think this is an even fight, or maybe to your point, Velekovic should be a small favorite, and I'm going to go ahead and take the plus here for a hundo myself.
Excellent, excellent. I like that bet. Another guy that I don't like betting against, and he's a plus 220 underdog, is Daniel Kelly. He's made me, he's burned me a couple times by betting against him because he doesn't look too oppressive. Comes
Double
in with
knee braces.
The big knee braces.
They have to wheel him down to the octagon.
He's 40 years old. He's fighting Elias Theodoro, and not a bad underdog to bet on. All his fights are close. The only times he gets blown out of the water are by punchers.
Yes.
By heavy-handed guys like Derek Brunson and Sam Alvey. And if you're not heavy-handed, I think he's going to keep this fight close and not a bad underdog. The only thing I do worry about is Elias Theodoro has a 5-inch reach advantage, and that could definitely work to his favor in winning a decision. Either way, I see this fight going the distance.
Theodoro is so huge for 185. I mean, that guy is a monster for 185. But I don't know that he's a really dynamic guy, right? He's just huge for 185. His striking's fairly crisp, but he doesn't really get knockouts. He doesn't get a lot of submissions. I'm not going to be betting on this fight. I can't find myself to put money against Daniel Kelly anymore. Look, this is the type of underdog he is in every single fight. He's always a big underdog. And how many times? I think he was a big underdog, like 5 in a row, and he went on that big 5-fight winning streak that included like Rashad Evans and Antonio Carlos Jr. I mean, he was beating legit guys, Daniel Kelly. And to your point, the only people that have given him trouble are big punchers. Derek Brunson just crushed him with a left hand, and Sam Alvey crushed him with a right hand. But besides that, nobody's really... I mean, he's one of those guys, he just hangs in there. He wears you down, and he has cardio for days. I don't want any part of this. I don't want to bet on Daniel Kelly because I just can't bring myself to do it. But I don't want to lay that price with Teodoro. This one's going to be a pass for me.
Same here. Another one that's a pass for me, Alexander Volkanovski against Shane Young. Unless you want to lay, $1,500 to make $250. I recommend passing on this one. I don't see how Shane Young wins this one. And I just don't, I don't like betting guys who are minus 650.
So maybe you can explain this. You've probably run into this at least once in your career. So this is the third opponent, basically, in a month for Alexander Volkanovski. Is there a point where the opponent changes when there's so many of them for one fight? Hey, I know I'm going to fight in November in Australia, but now you're on your third different opponent. Is there a point where it becomes detrimental to you? Like, who am I even fighting at this point?
Yeah, definitely. Opponent changes, fight cancellations when you're expected to fight and then you don't. Yeah, that definitely takes a toll on you psychologically. But, a young, hungry up-and-comer like this, I don't think it's going to affect as much as, say, if it happened to a veteran and a guy near the end of his rope. So I still expect him to win this fight. I just don't like.
And he's looked
minus. Good. He's looked great.
Yeah.
Heavy-handed, physically strong as a beast. But I just, I tend to stay away from guys who are, minus 500 and up.
And I tried to take a look at Sugar Shane, which is his nickname, by the way, Sugar Shane, to see, hey, maybe there's some value here. What's the path to victory? And he looked okay. He has a good kickboxing background, comes from City Kickboxing, which is a good gym out there in New Zealand. But I tried to find an opponent that I at least knew. Found one, Damian Brown, who's also on this card, Damian Brown, and he lost to Damian Brown. And I'm like, well, I sure as heck wouldn't want Damian Brown versus Volkanovski. So if Brown beat you, I'm not sure I want you either. So I decided to leave this one alone too.
So next up, Ashkan Mokhtarian versus Ryan Benoit. Ryan Benoit, before I left, was minus 265, and you like him in this. You're going to put a little play on him.
Yeah, I'm going to lay the 260 to make 100 on Ryan Benoit. Look, when you talk about level of competition, there's two things I love about Benoit. First of all, his level of competition. Brandon Bam Bam Moreno, Ben Wynn, Josh Sampo, and oh, by the way, owns a win over Sergio Pettis, who, if he wins in his next fight, is going to get a title shot against Demetrius Johnson, probably.
Didn't he knock him out?
Knocked out Sergio Pettis. He's been in there with just some unbelievable guys. For a guy who's like, 9-5? His level of competition is off the charts. He's fought an unbelievable resume, and he has amazing knockout power. 7 knockouts and 9 wins. And you might say, well, a lot of guys have a big knockout power. Not at 125 pounds. You don't see that kind of punching power very often at 125 pounds. And Ryan Benoit is a beast. And I think Mokhtarian's going to be there to get hit in this fight. He fights at Australian top team. He's okay. He likes to stand and trade a little bit too. He's more of a volume striker. And standing and trading here with Ryan Benoit, I think, is going to lead to a knockout. I think this might be the hardest puncher in the entire 125-pound division, and I have no trouble laying the 260 to make 100.
All right. Nik Lentz versus Will Brooks. You know what? I like Brooks in this fight, but when I saw he was minus 500, I started looking for excuses to bet Nik Lentz because I think this fight's going to be a little closer than the odds say it is. Nik Lentz is a tough, rugged guy, and minus 500. I was expecting Brooks to be about minus 200, minus 250. Minus 500 surprised me a little.
I have to pass on this because this fight was scheduled like 6 or 7 weeks ago. And I was the one telling people, lay the 220, the 240 with Will Brooks, which I thought was a great value. But now that it's minus 550, I'm like, well, I was telling everyone to bet Brooks before, and I bet him myself heavy. But at 240, even at 260 maybe, but at 500 or 550, I'm with you, but I didn't want to flip-flop because I originally thought, hey, look, 2 months ago when they were supposed to fight, I loved the matchup for Will Brooks. This is a get-you-back-on-track former Bellator lightweight champion matchup. And Nik Lentz is really, most of his good wins came at 145 pounds. He's not a big 155er. So I thought, look, this is a great fight for Will Brooks, but at minus 500, 550, look, Nik Lentz is too talented, in my opinion, to be that big of a favorite. I had to pass.
Yeah, you know what? When I was down at American Top Team, I saw Will Brooks training. He looked great. Physically looked great. And I talked to him a little bit. And yeah, he is a great athlete. Really good genetics. And apparently Nik Lentz is a guy who used to fight at 145 pounds. And he's the one who couldn't make weight for that fight. Nik Lentz had a whole lot of that fight because he was too heavy. So you always worry about a guy, and that's probably the reason he went from minus 250. While Brooks went from minus 250 favorite to minus 500.
How can the little guy not make a weight division up?
Johnny Hendricks moving up to middleweight and missing
not
weight.
Really carrying
So
that's a great red flag for our viewers that you just pointed out there. Look, when the smaller guy that used to fight a division lower can't make weight a division higher, that's a training issue.
Definitely got to question his motivation. And if he's just going in and collecting a paycheck.
I agree.
So Anthony Freight Train Hamilton versus Adam Wazorek, and this fight was supposed to happen a while ago.
This was supposed to be on the first fight of the main card on the Poland card, with Cowboy Cerrone and Darren Till, and it got postponed then. And we were talking before that fight that, look, Freight Train Hamilton retired in the octagon after his last fight, and we thought, look, he had a fight left on his contract, he got a free trip to Poland. Well, he got that free trip to Poland and didn't even have to fight. Now he's getting a free trip to Australia, too. Look, this guy retired. Now he got a free trip to Poland and a free trip to Australia. The problem is then I was really ready to back Wazorek and under. Because Freight Train Hamilton's been knocked out in the first round his last 3 fights. His last 4 fights haven't made it out of the first round. I'm like, there's no way this fight's getting out of the first round. Freight Train already retired. He just wanted the free trip to Poland. And maybe he just wanted the free trip to Australia again here. But the problem was, in between, I started watching, not just looking at Wazorek's fights, but actually watching them. And now I don't want to bet him anymore.
Wait, do you not want to bet him or the under or both?
Both. So, look, Freight Train Hamilton doesn't have a great chin. He tends to end fights early. But I'm not sure Wazorek is the finisher that I thought he was. In fact, I'm going to pass on this fight, but if someone put a gun to my head and said, you have to bet it, I think I would bet the underdog, Freight Train Hamilton. Really.
You were that unimpressed with Wazorek.
Yeah, just watching him. And look, you can have dull fights sometimes. Styles make fights.
But opponents. I mean, heavyweight, like he's on a 7-fight win streak, but not outside of the UFC. And
he's not knocking anybody out.
There's one weight class that, like, you could get tomato can after tomato can. It's at the heavyweight division.
And he has 3 knockouts.
So I take it you were unimpressed with the level
fighting
of competition.
Guys I've never heard of who
have terrible physiques.
Yes. He was only able to knock out 3 of them, and he actually was good on the ground in a few fights, but I'm like, I don't really see this fight hitting the ground. So I decided to get off the under because I don't want to lay $1.45 with the under. If he's a ground guy, that takes some time sometimes, because Freight Train's a big guy, actually has a good base. So I'm like, you're probably not getting Freight Train down right away. I just decided to leave it alone. Maybe it was a good thing that one got canceled, because I had a big bet on it last time.
Yeah, good point. So Frank Camacho versus Damian Brown. Right now you can get Damian Brown a slight underdog at +115, and I think he's a slight underdog because of his record. He's 17-10 versus Frank Camacho, who's 20-5, but Damian Brown has faced way better competition than Frank Camacho, and I think those records went into making Camacho a little favorite.
100% here, and I'm pretty familiar with Frank Camacho because I made a really big play on Jingling Lee in Frank Camacho's UFC debut against Frank Camacho. So I had watched some of his fights. He's from the Northern Mariana Islands, a really, really small set of islands Camacho comes from. And the vast majority of his fights happened in PXC, which is a really smaller organization. He was set up to fight opponents who seemed to be tailor-made for his style. And for a guy fighting guys that were made for him as a knockout puncher, he also got knocked out himself 3 times. He doesn't seem to have the best chin. Damian Brown is a true veteran of MMA. Yes, his record's not great. But this is a guy, he's been around in the UFC, he's fought in a few organizations, he's really good on the ground. I think Frank Camacho's record here is a little soft. I think Frank Camacho is a little one-dimensional. And how many times have we seen these guys that get a lot of knockouts against nobodies and come in, they don't really have a full mixed martial arts game. I'm actually nothing against Frank Camacho, Frank the Crank, but I'm going to go with Damian Beatdown Brown here, +110 for a hundo, because I feel like he's the more complete mixed martial artist, and I think Frank Camacho, he's going to come out swinging, he's going to be dangerous for about 3.5 minutes, and then from there on, if he doesn't get Damian Brown out of there in that first 3 minutes, Damian Brown will control the rest of the fight.
Yeah, you know what? I was impressed with Frank Camacho, 20-5. That's a pretty good record.
Yeah.
But then when you look at his level of competition,
they're all PXC fights.
It just wasn't
and his
too
UFC
good.
debut.
And then I thought, geez, how did he lose 5 times to these guys? And
Yeah,
just,
3 of them by knockout. Yeah,
yeah, another reason to bet Brown. But he does hit pretty hard. You're right. He would be dangerous in that first round. But you know, Damian Brown's pretty durable, and I think you know, from the second round on, this fight's his. And yeah,
at plus money sounds great.
Yeah, I played him as well. So Alex Chambers against Nadia Kassem in a women's fight. Chambers 5-3, Kassem undefeated at 4-0, and she's a -175 favorite.
I thought about playing Chambers. I almost pulled the trigger on it. It's possible I still might add it, but for the show purposes, I'm not going to play it. I'm going to pass on this one. Nadia Kassem, again, is one of those fighters who has a built-up record. Not only 4-0, but 4-0, 4 knockouts. So she's destroyed, knocked out everyone she fought. But similar to Frank the Crank Camacho, you know, her level of competition's been really soft. And I'm, at least with Alex Chambers, I get someone I've seen fight before. I understand their skill set. If I leaned anyway in this fight, I'd go with the proven commodity in Chambers. But at this point, I just want to pass. Because I feel like there's a huge age difference here, too. I think Chambers is like 38 or 39. Maybe even 39, and then Kessem's like 20. Yeah. And I just thought, well, you got one on the way up, and she's obviously aggressive and powerful. She knocks everyone out she fought. And one, you know, there comes a point at 39 or 40 where, hey, I'm still buried on the 10th fight of the Australia card where, what are you know, I don't know if she's just collecting a free trip to Australia to hang out on the beach. So
yeah, I was looking for a reason to bet Chambers, but like, I just couldn't find much on Nadia Kassem.
Yeah,
you know, couldn't really see.
Yeah, and it's hard. You can't get any video on those fights. They're all such low level. Maybe she's a destroyer. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I decided to leave it alone.
There's better bets on this card to make. So we both pass on that one. And 2 fights left. Janelle Lausa versus Eric Shelton. Huge favorite. Shelton, it's up to -370. People love him. I'm personally passing on this one.
100% pass for me. I looked at the fight. I know Eric Shelton pretty well. He's pretty good. I mean, he's a guy who's developing a skill set. He's okay. I tried, again, to find a reason to bet the dog because I've just never seen Eric Shelton as a 4-1 favorite. Couldn't really fall in love with the dog. Couldn't get that clear path to victory. Decided to pass.
Last but not least, Rashad Coulter versus Tai Tuivasa. Tuivasa -170 favorite. And yeah, this one didn't excite me either.
I'm actually taking a shot. I'm going to put a hundo on Rashad Coulter at +150, 100 to make 150. Tai Tuivasa reminded me of, and I can't think of his name now, there was another Samoan heavyweight that came over in the UFC. His nickname was the Hulk. What was it? It was
Sui Pelele.
Sui Pelele. Yes, thank you. Sui Hulk Pelele.
He's good.
It was really good. He was good. But he couldn't compete with the most highest echelon of heavyweights, right? He didn't have the stand-up striking and or the ground game, really, the defensive ground game. But he was good, and he was entertaining to watch. And when I look at the record and then watched a couple of fights at Tai Tuivasa, I went, wow, he reminds me of the Hulk a little bit. Both of these guys bang. All of the knockouts, all of the wins by both fighters are by knockout here. So I went to look at the under. Hey, someone's getting knocked out, right? That's all these guys do. But I don't want to lay 180 on 1.5. Basically, you need a first-round knockout then. So I didn't want to do that, and I decided, look, someone's getting knocked out here. I know who Rashad Coulter is, a big, huge guy, and he tends to knock people out or get knocked out, and +150, we'll take a shot that he lands first.
I always love, you know what, I love betting dogs, so I may put a little play on him too.
Someone's going down, probably pretty quick in that fight, and at least I know about Rashad Coulter. Yeah. And I know he can bang. Look, when he hits people, they go to sleep. Yeah,
really on this card, the only dog I've really found worth betting is Tabura, and you can make an argument for Daniel Kelly, so yeah, a little play on Coulter. Might not be a bad idea, but there you have it. There's our bets. You got our $100, $200, and $300 bets, and let us know your results. Good luck on this fight card. Next week's will be a little better.
Yeah, well, next week we get the return of the Michael Bisping versus Kevin Gastelum, but after that we get into some serious cards. The weekend after, Max Holloway versus Jose Aldo, Ngannou versus Overeem on that card. It's going to be awesome.
Excellent. Well, for Matthew Holt, I'm Stephan Bonnar. Thanks for tuning in. See you next week on the final round.